So, welcome back from the break. Now we have had a presentation by us this morning from the curriculum, and we had a visit from Bård Grante from Novo Nordisk. And it's now time to combine what you read, studied, and what we talked about this morning, and this presentation. So what I would like to start with, I don't know how much you can see, but I have made a drawing of the STAR model, a change management model, and just listed the types, sources, and power here. So what I would like now is for you to talk with your neighbor for a few minutes about if you apply the STAR model on the presentation by Bård Grante, then what did he actually talk about? So the idea is to apply the model as you read it. We presented this morning with strategy, structure, processes, incentive structures, and people practice, and then apply that on the presentation. So what did he actually talk about? So please spend a few minutes with your neighbor. So now it works. Yeah, so let's continue. I would like to hear if you apply the STAR model on the presentation by Bård, then what did he talk about? Could we... What about you here in front? Would you like to share? Good colleague.
So
basically just try to map and say, okay, did he talk about strategy, for example?
we haven't got to that point yet.
Okay, so how far did you get, or where did you start?
We just wrapped up the presentation from the Novo Nordisk.
Yeah.
What was it about? What he mentioned to us? It's a great, it's a huge company, and they need to cooperate with all their employees. So how they're structured, how they solve any possible problems inside.
Yeah. So he talked about problem solving, but you also talk about how can you, if you think back, how were they organized? Did you talk about that? No.
I think he did. There are several layers of managers.
Yeah.
And each one is like a hierarchy.
Yes,
maybe
so we have a bureaucracy, yes, with several layers, yes.
Maybe it was not a flat model, but a tall one. There are like several steps.
Yeah, they had several layers, yes, so it's more tall than flat, yeah. Could you say something about how they were organized? They're all around the world? No?
No.
No, okay. Yes, there's someone up here in front.
Yeah, Mr. Nunn. We could say some about the new strategy and some of the new processes they're implementing to acquire this strategy. So they recently got a new CEO, and he imposed a strategy where it should be more simplistic.
Yeah.
And he would try to remove some of the bureaucracy which Novo Nordisk had developed for a lot of years. And to do this, they had started to restructure. They have moved a lot of boards and committees, which previously they had to pass their suggestions from. And one of the processes that he did, of course he's very new, but he wrote a lot of emails around to the senior managers, the top managerial level at Novo Nordisk, and imposed these changes to them first.
Yeah. So now you're combining, you're saying, okay, we used to have one strategy, now we have a new strategy. So we're looking at the old way of designing the organization, and now we're proposing a new strategy for a new setup. And then you combine it with the change management model and say, okay, somewhere along the way, the new CEO must have assessed the need for change. He decided to make a new strategy in terms of it should be more simple and agile. And now he's implementing it by sending out emails and instructing the managers that now we need to do it differently. So thank you for sharing, saying, okay, we have the strategy and we know how they were organized, and now they are looking for a simpler structure. And as you said before, like a bureaucracy with a very tall structure. Yeah? Any comments on the way they work? Did he give us any information about how their work processes, what they look like, or their incentive system, or the people practice? Yes, there's a hand over here.
He said that they, of course, they had some rules. They also had this team which controls the environment. Also, you can say that this change of strategy actually comes from recruiting a new CEO, which is on the people.
Yeah, the new strategy is based on that they have a new CEO. Yes.
Yeah, and that's people.
But in terms of recruitment, the people practice, he shared a lot about how they do it.
Yeah, and also he mentions this Brazilian manager which comes into this Danish environment.
Yeah, so they have a lot of different cultures.
Yeah.
And then they have a full, if you look back at the model that Kasper showed us about how we have different types of control, you can see that the way that they introduce new colleagues, you could say, is by applying the clan control. So building up social norms. How do we do it here in Novo Nordisk?
You know, here's your desk, and here is some people who can show you around and show you how it works, and also very clear in the contracts what is your job.
Yeah. So they socialize you, or they show you the Novo Nordisk way. Okay, and then incentive systems, the reward systems. You talked a lot about measures. Yeah, if you have any comments?
Yeah, he also talked about these bonuses which they were reviewing. Do these bonuses actually work?
Yeah.
And could we do something instead, and could we do it any other way?
Yes, there's a comment in the back.
So regarding the structure corner of the star, he also mentioned that many people tend to rush with restructuring activities, and he mentioned that you should rather do a real good root cause analysis of the problem and then act accordingly.
Yeah.
And the way they do it in Novo Nordisk was, as I perceived it, is they have this audit and feedback system, so these processes actually which provide feedback and information on how well the organization works, and then they use this feedback to improve their organizational setup.
So instead of rushing into the implementation of a change, he said you need to go back and assess the need for change before you start implementing it.
Yeah.
So just instead of just saying we need to change this, how does it fit with the rest? Yes. Then you also know when you have the way that you organize it for a purpose. You want a certain performance, and you also want a behavior. Did you talk about that? He mentions absence. Yeah.
He mentioned he had this book of practices and also this had this control team, to assess why do they leave, what's the stress, is it...
Yeah, that's the cause of this. So you have the absence and you have the turnover.
And those were indicators.
Yeah, because that's the outcome of the way that we organize. So now when we see we have absence, turnover, and stress, then we go back and say, okay, how come? What is it in the way that we organize that we end up? Is it a combination, as you said, with the process and the incentive system, or how we are organized? So we need to find out, going back to this situation, saying this is the situation we have, we need to understand how come we ended up in this situation. Yeah? Yes. So looking at his presentation, we basically got an idea about how, in a very general term, how they organize Novo Nordisk, or how they view their organization, and also what they're concerned with, both in terms of behavior and performance, because they had a lot of performance goals. He also talked about that they are in a change process, so having one way of designing, or one organization design that they now need to change, or they have started to change, based on the assessment for a need that they need to be more agile. That's a new strategy, and now they're part of the implementation. Finally, he talked about conflicts, different types of conflicts. He talked about conflicts that was interpersonal, so between managers. And he went back and said, okay, why are they in conflict? It's because of scarce resources. So we know the types. We also know the source, the scarce resources. It could also be, he talked about there was a conflict regarding you had the flow, that you actually have talents that move fast through the organization, so you lose knowledge. So that's another thing. And he talked about with the task interdependency, that suddenly you have one unit which has one incentive, and you have another one having another incentive, and they start producing a component which is basically not needed yet. So the task interdependency becomes a source for a conflict, as he just mentioned, the last thing. So looking at the core theory that you read for today, with the STAR model, the change management, and the power and conflicts, you have here an example about how his presentation actually embraces it all. We also talked about motivation, and I know that this is only part of curriculum for next week in chapter 9, but we showed you, we talked about this with the motivation equation and Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because in order to understand the incentive systems, you also need to understand motivation. Yes. So, you have any questions for this wrap-up? Otherwise, I will continue about what to do for the afternoon. Okay, it seems clear. Good. Because in the afternoon, you're going to work with a continuous walk. And what we would propose you to do is, of course, to start finding out, okay, how are they organized today? What is their existing, the present design that they have? What is their core strategy at the moment? How are they organized? What characterizes their work processes? What could be the incentive or the reward system that they have? And here I would say try to look into chapter 9, even though you haven't read it yet. And how could we characterize the people that we have recruited? You have different information about that. Then they meet Mr. Cheng, and he suggests, shouldn't we construct a new VOC? They call it the continuous VOC, instead of having these old VATs, they're called, right? That they used to work with. So your work is to find out, should they decide on a new strategy and go for this together with Mr. Cheng or not? And if they do so, then what would then happen to this? But as you know, this part is linking the business model canvas with the organizational theory. So you need to be aware of, okay, if we have an existing business model canvas or business model, and we change it for a new, then what is also the value? What are the value propositions that we are actually giving to our customers, and who would be our new customers in this? So you cannot just look at the STAR model individually, you also need to come back to the business model canvas and make an analysis of Balloon Foods. Then if you decide to go for a new strategy, and make a new change or make a design change of the organization, then look into the change management theories. So what is actually the need for doing this? And if we decide to do it, then what should we be aware of in the implementation part? And that is where the types of conflicts, the sources of conflicts, and who has power in an organization, you need to look into that to understand what can then be something you need to be aware of in the implementation process. You have different people, you have different functions, different seniority in your case that gives you different type of data regarding this. You have any things to add?
Well, I really like this continuous VOC case, and the VOC was developed out here, so it's a nice piece of technology, but it has interesting market implication. You could develop it for like small businesses and just produce. So there's also a strategic choice. Should I just sell this and patent it and give all the rights to Mr. Chang? Or should I sell smaller scale versions for fast food chains? Something like that. There's all sorts of options here. You have a technology. You also have the discussion of how should we present food if it's better quality? Should it be in the desk with all the other freeze fried goods, or should it be labeled differently? Is it a different brand? Could we consider such a high quality brand or such a high quality product within the same brand? Perhaps not. This company is known for their slushy whatever products, which is cheap and fulfilling, but it's not high quality. So if we bring in a new type of product, can it actually fit within the same brand, or would you really damage both the brand and the new product by doing so? So there's lots of interesting things to do when you work with this case.
Yeah. No, it works. I don't know. So remember, not just to do the analysis of with the STAR model, but also look back into the business and the market and your customers. So who would that then be? Any comments, or you have a question for Kasper? Yes?
The red thing. Oops.
Relate to continuous work. That is exercise for today.
Yeah.
It is much more like a decision making according to these structures. And of course, when you suggest a solution, you have to verify that this solution is feasible according to hierarchical organizations of needs. Is it right?
No, you're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
No. Continuous work for exercises.
Yeah.
That's he said. It is much like making decisions, right decisions, and try to exercise the model here.
Yes, but if you make a decision, for instance, if you would test come up with a new product, then perhaps you should test it in a small market setting, and then discuss, does this actually fill the market need? Then you test your proposal and your decision before you implement it. That would be a way to do it. The food company I worked with yesterday, they used, there's an exhibition hall close to where they produce food. So every time they come up with a new idea, they develop 10 different types of the same thing, different glazing, different taste, but within the same ballpark. And then they go to the lunch hour and they hand out this food for free at the exhibition, and they immediately interview people. Well, if you want this, you can have it for free, but could you just answer 3 questions? So they get immediate feedback. How does the customer react to this new product? And that's a way to test hypothesis before going back and investing a lot of money in implementing such a new product. Validation, yes.
But you're not supposed to do this today. We don't go that far. Basically, we ask you to do the analysis and assess, okay, should we do this or should we not do it? What could be in it for us? What is it, the value that we create by doing this? And if we go for that new strategy, then how should we then organize ourselves or our business? And what should we be aware of in the implementation process? Yeah? Okay. Thank you so much for today. Please remember to fill in the feedback schemes so we can continuously develop TEMO. Thank you for today.
Thank you.